Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. There's been a lot of talk about who's gonna be the next Yokozuna, and the volume of the conversation jumped by an order of magnitude when November saw both Kotozakura and Hoshoryu put themselves in position to potentially take the rope in January. The puzzle with each of them is that fans have expected this sort of performance for some time, so have they actually made the leap to Yokozuna level consistency? Or are they destined to only occasionally break 11 wins? More importantly for the sport right now, can either or both hit that 13-win level again on demand and reach Yokozuna right now? Usually when I do a breakdown, I look at the good and bad of a wrestler's performances. But with a Yokozuna candidate, their record needs to be almost all good or else they wouldn't be in this position. So we're going to focus on the roadblocks each wrestler is most likely to face come January. Let's talk about Koto first, since he's the easier one to discuss. I'm not going to spend much time on him facing Teru or the other Ozeki. By way of their rank, there's supposed to be challenges who he won't beat every time, no matter how good he is or becomes. We can shorthand it to this. Koto finally beat Teru on the last day of July 2024, his first win in 10 matches. This very much plays into Teru's weakness at the tail end of tournaments. Fortunately for Koto, as the top Ozeki, a match against Teru would again be on day 15. If Teru's feeling so good he maintains form all 15 days this time, Koto can still win, but he'd definitely be an underdog. If Teru falls off again, Koto will probably win. It's impossible though to predict right now. But odds are Koto will have either secured or lost the rope by then, so it may not matter. Koto and Onosato are 2-2 in their last 4. Onosato won in the Bashos where he took the title, Koto won in the Bashos where Onosato went 9-6 and didn't really look the same. To dig a little deeper, Onosato basically overpowered Koto in May, Koto won a pretty good battle in July, they had a very good fight in September that required a rematch which Onosato won easily, then in November, Onosato got a drive on Koto, but Koto turned it into a throw and got the win. They're fairly well matched, but both of Koto's wins required turning Onosato's charge into a throw. He also tried throwing Onosato in the matches he lost. It's not like Koto's bad at throws, but it doesn't play into his strengths. That's a bad sign. He needs to be able to force Onosato to play his game if he wants to win this matchup with any consistency. Right now, it doesn't appear he's able to do that. Hoshoryu might be the one going for Yokozuna with Koto, but he's also by far the easiest opponent of the 3 for Koto to face. Koto beat him 5 straight from July 2023 through May 2024, and except for the second of those, none were particularly close. Nephew won this past July when he finally hit a throw on Koto, but also did the splits and knocked himself out of the tournament. He won again in September on day 15, but I'm not sure how much we should take from that. Koto was 8-6, so he didn't have much on the line, but Nephew was 7-7 and needed the win to avoid going Kadoban. Motivation is a hell of a drug. Then they had the championship match in November, which Koto won. Koto can win this matchup with straightforward sumo, by thwarting Hoshoryu's throws, or by absorbing his attack, which was the core reason for his victory in November. Koto poses problems that Hoshoryu still got to solve, or else Koto's going to win far more often than not. One thing that stifled Koto's rise is the fact he consistently loses matches he shouldn't. Sometimes these are one-offs to opponents he generally stomps, but a handful of guys who aren't at his rank have still caused him a serious hassle of late. Since every match matters to a Yokozuna hopeful, it's worth looking at these matchups over the past year. First is Oho. 6 months ago, it would have been bonkers to even theoretically think Oho would be in a position to play spoiler here, but he's beaten Koto twice in a row, including his only loss in November. Koto won the matchup in January, March, and May, so let's go through those quick. In January, Koto gets his left arm under Oho's right on the tachi-ai, keeps his hand up by Oho's shoulder when Oho pushes him back, then uses it to shove Oho to the side when they get close again. This sets the tone. Oho recovers at the rope and they battle for a bit, but when Oho gets his right hand up towards Koto's face, Koto slips it and parries. This gives him the angle again, and Oho can't recover in time to save the match. March is similar, but we can see more clearly what happens. Usually, when a wrestler parries a push, he does it around the upper arm or elbow to knock the arm away. Because Koto keeps his hand on Oho's shoulder, he's able to use Oho as a brace so he can pivot away more easily as he defends. Again, this sets up the whole fight. Oho does well to pivot to the Tawara and brace, but because Koto's coming, he has to get his weight forward to resist. So Koto doesn't even bother pushing. He just pulls Oho back in, pushing down on his head, and maintains the hold for so long that he can come in and finish the fight with momentum. In May, both of them change tactics. Oho doesn't bring his right arm up, but Koto doesn't bring his left up either. I don't know if he had reason to think Oho would switch it up, but in any case, he's not able to find an early advantage here. We can speed through the rest because it's basically a long Oshi battle. Sometimes Koto pushes Oho back, sometimes Oho pushes Koto back, and Koto wins when he lands a good push after Oho wears down. They didn't meet in July. Oho finally got his first win against Koto in September. Oho gets the initial push, but after Koto backs up in circles, he really ramps up the aggression. First he gets Oho bent against the rope. Oho's quick on the parry and escapes. Koto comes back in, Oho fends him off for a bit until Koto gets inside and takes the belt. Koto presses as Oho circles away, looking almost desperate to finish the match, but he can't get enough leverage to force Oho out. Eventually, Oho circles far enough to get Koto moving back, and as soon as he realizes he's not about to win either, Oho wisely takes the belt and creates a stalemate. After about 15 seconds, Oho attacks. Koto tries to push him away, but he looks too tired. This was the basho where Koto was hurt and finished 8-7, although he was 4-0 at the time of this match. Maybe he got more aggressive to try and win the fight quickly because of the injury, but regardless of the reason, it backfired. In November, Koto again showed serious aggression. He pushes Oho back initially, but Oho swim moves out of it. Koto chases and locks both hands on the belt. Oho clamps both arms, but this should still be a fantastic position for Koto. However, Oho actually drives him back. Koto shakes loose, then parries Oho's right. Oho attacks again, Koto parries again, and with Oho bent down here, it looks like Koto has the advantage. Then it gets a little weird. Oho steps across, grabs Koto's right arm, and spins back to the center. He pushes Koto, then Koto grabs his arm the same way. They're doing a little do-si-do. But Oho handles it better, charges, and Koto's last-ditch pushdown attempt doesn't work. So what's the upshot? Is Oho the most dangerous roadblock to Kotozakura's Yokozuna dreams? Not quite, but he does look like a problem. It's not just because Oho's improved either. I'd bet part of the conversation at Koto's stable early in the year was, hey, you're winning, but at some point he'll learn to work around your defense and beat you. You need to attack more. The trap here is that Koto achieved several good positions in the September and November fights, he just couldn't finish him off. That can make it seem like the approach is good, and if he keeps with it, the results will come. But that's a long-term goal, and he probably needs to beat Oho in January if he wants that rope. These aggressive tactics haven't worked yet, which means now he has to figure out if he keeps going with them or tries to find a better balance of offense and defense in their next match. Next is Daisho. Koto beat Daisho in November, but lost the 3 before that. Again, let's look at the full year. January. Koto withstood the push, hit a mini pull down and sidestep, and that pulled Daisho close enough to allow Koto inside for a belt grip. Daisho's helpless in that position, easy day. March. Daisho starts with a left arm clamp and right hand pushing, but Koto's left arm on the back of Daisho's right triceps makes it so Daisho can't extend the arm, which destroys his entire game plan. Koto can just walk him backwards. And by the way, the fact Koto's so strong Daisho can't push out of this is ridiculous. Anyway, Daisho's forced to release his left arm clamp, which gives Koto a chance to actively push him back. Koto lands the right hand face shove, Daisho parries and sidesteps, but even though he stays in the ring, he's vulnerable and gives it up rather than get yeeted into the bleachers. Those were 2 perfectly surgical wins, so what changed? May. Daisho changes up the start this time. Koto tends to keep his left hand low on the tachi-ai, so Daisho brings his hands up like normal, but does essentially a full body parry and rotates while pushing Koto off to the side. He lands another quick push, then swipes his arms down at total air. He didn't lose his mind or anything, he anticipated Koto's arms coming up and wanted to bash him away to leave another push open. Because that didn't happen, Koto's able to drive him back to the rope. Koto's usually very good about following the channel's primary rule, don't leave your arm out, and he doesn't break the rule too badly here, but Daisho's still quick enough with the parry to free himself and get under Koto's arm. Koto finds his balance and has good space behind him, so this is a fairly even position, but Daisho hits the rare super effective face shove. Koto's forced back further, and although he reacts correctly, clamping Daisho's right arm and using it as leverage to scoot aside, Daisho's got too much momentum barreling forward and finds the finish. The Tachi change was fairly important here. It didn't win Daisho the fight obviously, but it created the circumstances where Koto taking over for a moment still allowed Daisho a chance to defend and survive, instead of losing quickly as in the last two fights. It took a while, but he managed to spin that into a victory. July. Daisho uses the same instant parry on the Tachi, but Koto seems more ready for it. He doesn't step as far with his left foot before pivoting. Daisho hits him with an immediate face push again, but this time barrels in with his whole body rather than pushing more with his arms. Critically, he gets his left arm around Koto's right, both trapping the arm and giving him an outstanding angle of attack. It's not enough leverage to get Koto all the way out, so he releases and immediately gets super close, forearm on chest as Koto tries to recover. Koto steps away with a pushdown, and it's to his credit that he actually hangs in after all that, but Daisho catches up and finishes the push out. September. Daisho tries the same step off, but this time Koto's totally ready and immediately pushes Daisho's left hand off his face before it can do anything. That puts Daisho in prime position to be pushed back, which Koto does, while Daisho defends against Koto's hands. He succeeds, then gets a little push off to make space, and another push to slide back and create distance. He does a little swipe at Koto's hands, misses, but doesn't overcommit this time, so he's able to stay balanced when Koto follows up. Koto pushes him back again, Daisho parries and sidesteps away, and then he's got Koto's back to the rope. They tangle, Koto pushes down, but Daisho's able to roll with it, plant his feet, and launch himself back in again. Koto bends Daisho back with a left to his face, but Daisho bulls through it, spins Koto with a push, and even though it looks like Koto could maybe ballet his way back into the fight, he's done. Like in his September match against Oho, he was more aggressive than usual, which gave Daisho some chances to counterattack. Again, maybe this was due to injury and wanting to get out of there, but regardless of why, it looked like it gave him plenty of chances that he just couldn't finish off. The one definite takeaway is that he figured out how to counter this new Tachi of Daisho's, which is good. November. Daisho doesn't try the immediate step off again. However, after initial contact, he makes a small hop to the right and returns to the face push, so he's basically trying to adjust the Tachi he'd been using rather than fully switching up his approach. Koto parries it off again, and when Daisho pushes back in, Koto just gets his weight down. Daisho pinches his right arm, so Koto plants that hand on Daisho's chest, clamps with his left arm, and pulls up on Daisho's right to minimize any ability he has to push. Daisho has to let the pinch go, pushing down on Koto's right as he hops left, with an eye towards stepping around fast enough to create a better push angle. Unfortunately, Koto jacks him mid-hop with a one-handed shove and sends him all the way to the rope. Daisho slides into it and uses his planted right foot to give Koto a full body bash as he charges in, which sends Koto back and gives Daisho space to work with. It's a great reaction, honestly. But as he counterattacks, Koto grabs his right arm, pulls him in enough to stop him from extending his arms, then keeps stepping right and pushes Daisho away to get his own side angle. Koto comes in, Daisho barely manages to turn through the attack and face Koto, but he can't defend everything this time and out he goes. What we mentioned with Oho about needing a better balance between offense and defense is more on display here. Koto was very aggressive, but only after he used defense to create an opening. It looked like he attacked for most of the match because he was able to create those openings pretty quickly, not because he was attacking at all costs. Overall, considering that one change on the Tachi gave Daisho just enough breathing room to turn some matches around, it looks like this was always a closer matchup than their total results suggested should be the case. Koto's in a good position going into January though, because he's pretty much figured out how to shut down that tactic, and now it's on Daisho to figure something out if he wants to get back on the good side of the scoreboard. And finally, Kirishima. Kotozakura has a god-awful record against Kiri, including losing the last 3. The most recent was September when Kiri was 12-3, but before that was July when Kiri was 8-7, and March where Kiri went 5-10 in his first basho after his most recent injuries. So even beaten and battered, Kirishima's gotten the better of it. Let's look at those 3 matches. March. They bounce off each other on the Tachi and spend the first part of the match pushing against each other, not really getting anywhere. After a brief stare down, Koto reaches out, overextends a bit, and Kiri dives in when Koto pulls his arms back. This is kinda genius because Kiri gets in without even needing to actively make the space. Koto made a small mistake and Kiri completely jumped on it. Once Kiri gets the belt, Koto makes a bigger mistake and tries to use his clamp on Kiri's arm for a throw. He's done this against other guys in the past, trying to move like this when it's absolutely not necessary. He has the size to make anything Kiri wants to do difficult, plus he knows Kiri's not at full strength. But Kiri hangs on and nearly pushes Koto out right there. After that, even wounded, Kiri's in a fantastic position with a right grip all the way around Koto's back and his head dug into Koto's neck and jaw. He doesn't rush, and when he does attack, he slams his entire body forward, popping Koto onto his right foot. Then, as Koto tries to swing around, Kiri immediately pulls down on Koto's left arm to prevent him from recovering and follows that with an immediate shove. This is why Kirishima was the first of the current crop to reach Ozeki. He has these move sequences that, in real time, make you wonder what just happened, but when you look closer, it's all set up. He's even aware enough not to overcommit to the push when Koto's too far from the rope for it to work, and immediately drops back down, reclaiming his grip on Koto's belt. And as he continues looking for ways to win, he keeps doing that, not overcommitting and making sure he maintains an advantageous position. Eventually he tries a trip, which doesn't do much except make Koto step around it and back, but before Koto can set his feet, Kiri steps, uses Koto's own belt grip as a sort of rubber band to pull him in, and twirls him into a gorgeous throw to take the match. This was Kirishima using serious veteran tactics to absolutely own a very tough opponent. I know this is a breakdown of Koto, but I can't let this match pass without giving Kiri his flowers. July. They kinda stick to each other after initial contact, but Kiri's got Koto's right arm pinched. He uses that to push Koto and step aside, and even though Koto immediately pivots and attacks, it's like he doesn't really touch Kiri at all. Kiri hits a small pull down on Koto's arms, followed immediately by a swat to Koto's right arm, sending him off balance and past Kiri. To be perfectly honest, I don't think even Kiri expected the swat to work that well. But he doesn't hesitate, catches Koto from the side, and Koto has no real chance to stay in the match. The key thing here, though, is how Kiri was able to slip Koto's attack so effortlessly. He doesn't need to take big whacks at Koto's arms. He does just enough to blunt the push. When guys land big swinging parries, for example, their opponent has to recover, but often so do they. Because Kiri defends himself with smaller actions, he's already in position to make his next move while his opponent recovers, and that's often the whole fight. September. They tangle on the start, pushing off each other, but Kiri comes forward and slides Koto back a bit. He finds a strong position, underhand left grip on the belt and head pushing on Koto's jaw. As soon as he rises up to push though, Koto hefts him around towards the rope. This is a pretty smart play by Koto. If Kiri comes in directly, he'll have to bring his weight up to push, and when that happens, it's much easier for Koto to swing him around. Kiri, however, is able to get his weight forward despite being on only one foot, which keeps him in the match. He lands in a lunge, which looks okay, but you can tell this is an awkward position because he ends up crossing his feet. I don't care what combat sport you're in, don't cross your feet. Anyway, they stabilize and hang out for a bit. Then, as soon as Kiri steps in, since they're in opposite stances, Koto tries to use the open side and throw him. But Kiri most likely knew this was coming given what Koto tried initially, so he doesn't bring his weight up for a full attack. This lets him keep his feet on the ground and wreck the throw attempt. Not only that, it lets him get his left knee inside of Koto's right, give Koto a yank, and take him down. In sum, do not underestimate Kirishima, regardless of how much he's struggled over the past several tournaments. He's the superior tactical wrestler, and it's still not close. Koto may have been lucky Kiri did so badly in November, because that poor performance is why their matchup was taken off the schedule and replaced. Then again, if they'd fought and Koto had found a way to win, he could go into January with confidence in the matchup. Now, he's on his rope run, but Kiri's no less the boogeyman he'd been before. Now, let's list the main threats to Kotozakura's rope run. Fortunately, there are only 3 really dangerous opponents: Onosato, Kirishima, and Terunofuji. As a bonus, Teru really only fits in this category if he's near full strength on day 15, which isn't a given. If he's breaking down by then, he's more of a medium threat along with Oho and Daisho. Lesser threats include Hoshoryu, Abi, Wakamoto Haru, and Ura, all of whom tend to lose to Koto, but they've had just enough recent success against him to have a reasonable shot at playing spoiler. If Terunofuji goes on a run, he could be a problem as well, but he has to earn his shot at Koto first. Odds of making Yokozuna? 50-50. 12 wins might be enough, but he should expect it to take 13. That means beating everyone he's a clear favorite against below Ozeki and not getting caught out against Hoshoryu, or else finding wins against Onosato and or Terunofuji. He went 14-1 last time, so obviously he's capable, but never slipping is really hard to do. Like with Koto, I'm not going to spend much time on the high ranks with Dear Nephew. Hoshoryu and Terunofuji are slated to meet on day 14. If Teru's fallen apart by then, maybe Nephew has a chance, but he's never won, and for all the difficulty he had attacking Koto head-on in November, trying it on the Kaiju is gonna be worse. Even a halfway there Teru should still beat his ass. Hoshoryu won his first 3 matches against Onosato, each by the same type of throw. Surprisingly, the last one was the most highlight reel of the 3. It's more common that wrestlers learn to defend a move they keep seeing, making it harder to pull off, even if it does ultimately work. But even with that last one, it was apparent Onosato was trying to do a better job of staying on top of Nephew and not allowing the throw. Eventually he was gonna figure it out. And after their July match got wiped out by Hoshoryu's injury, Onosato absolutely blasted him in September. Now, if you just look at the records, you might say, hey, Nephew was injured in September and then beat Onosato in November, so he'll be fine. Problem is, Onosato absolutely had the better of him in their last match. Hoshoryu won because he grabbed Onosato's wrist and turned it into a last-second arm drag. It was a hell of a move, but it was also a position where Onosato will win the next 9 times. Onosato appears to have figured out how to keep Nephew at bay, which means he's gonna keep being a problem. Of course, we discussed the Kotozakura matchup before and how that's also a problem. In conclusion, Hoshoryu's a clear underdog to all 3 of his current peers. Now, with Hoshoryu, I want to approach things differently than with Koto. Rather than discuss specific matchups, let's talk about the general view that Nephew's success is the result of not reflexively relying on throws and adding more straightforward power to his game. It does seem that way, but you know we prefer data to vibe checks, and if it's true, it means past results aren't as meaningful as might usually be the case. So, how can we determine whether Nephew's really evolved his game? The obvious answer might be to look at how many times he wins with throws as opposed to straightforward techniques like a Yorikiri or Oshidashi. That's not a good metric though. It's not uncommon to throw an opponent, have them stay on their feet but be badly off balance, and earn a force-out win because that was the last move you did to get him out of the ring. It also doesn't indicate how often throws are attempted, which is really the issue in play. No one would criticize Nephew for trying 15 Uwatanages if all of them were great and there was never a better option. So instead, I went through all of his 2024 matches. I kept track of how many matches per basho he tried or threatened at least one throw. If he's throwing less and blasting forward more, then we should see that in the numbers, right? Well, not so much. In every tournament, he attempted throws in about half his matches. November was no different. So a reduction in throw attempts generally isn't correlated with his strong performance. Quick note, I'm counting moves like trips and arm pulls in with throws since they're also based on unbalancing the opponent and or using their momentum against them. It's just simpler to say throws rather than throws, trips, and so on. But to be clear, the vast majority of what's being counted here are actual throws. In any case, although the pure numbers didn't change much, I felt like I saw a difference in the quality of his throws over time, so I broke it down further. At first, I split his throws into 4 categories: throws that led to him losing, throws that had little effect, throws that led to a win but where they were clearly forced, and throws he nailed with excellent timing or technique. However, in the end, I only included the last group because those are the throws that worked and were definitely worth doing. The others were all flawed in their own way. Getting away from the poorly timed throws, even if they sometimes worked, was the whole point of the critique. He's expected to win consistently, and they only sometimes work. Doing the breakdown this way showed a clearer difference between tournaments. January 2024 was actually pretty good. Of his 6 throws, 3 were solid, and the other 3 went more with the momentum of the fight. None were poor decisions, and all of them came in wins. For whatever reason, that level of throw success did not hold. He tried throws in 9 of 15 fights in March, and while his moves against Terunofuji and Onosato were absolutely highlight reel, the rest were anywhere from mediocre to unhelpful. None of them appeared to get him beat, but there were plenty of occasions where one could reasonably argue that a straightforward attack would have been at least as good of an option. Then came May. This was the start of Terunofuji running roughshod over him. He tried nearly as many throws as in March, 8 in 15 matches, and still only had 2 really nice ones. This included the ultra clean kickflip throw on Onosato though, so it's easy to forget about everything that didn't work. July was better. He only fought 12 days and tried throws 6 times, with 3 working well and only Terunofuji really thwarting him. September was the injury basho where he didn't land a single high quality throw. The only really good win using our broader definition of throw was his nasty trip on Kirishima. But November was different. The numbers tell part of the story. 7 attempted throws in 15 matches, with 4 landing really solidly against Ura, Wakataka Kage, Oshoma, and Chura no Umi. This is the only tournament of the 6 where more than half of his throw attempts were right on the money. You might point out that this is probably due to the quality of the competition on the other end, and it's absolutely true that he clowned Oshoma and Chura no Umi with probably the easiest throws he's had in years. But this is part of the point. He chased throws against the guys who couldn't stop him, not the guys who could. Well, that's not completely true. Atami ran through whatever attempted to throw Hoshoryu wanted to make and only lost due to his own fumble. Kotozakura, as mentioned, absorbed Hoshoryu's attack and sat down on the throw when it came. He and Coach Dad probably figured that in the biggest match of their lives, there was no way Nephew wouldn't go for a throw if the initial attack didn't work, and he was ready for it. The last throw was against Onosato, which, again, was the lucky arm drag. Hoshoryu no doubt intended for a more proper throw, so to speak, but as with the Atami match, he wasn't even allowed a chance to get in position for it. Still, he did a much better job knowing when to bust out the throws. The 3 that didn't work weren't forced for no reason. They were all against 400-pound plus opponents who he doesn't yet have the capacity to beat in a straight-ahead fight, at least not consistently. His best chance against Koto is still probably if he controls how he locks onto the belt, and I don't know how he's supposed to beat Onosato except with a throw. You gotta figure at this point that he needs to try literally anything else against Terunofuji, but at least it's clear he thinks throws are the way to go, no matter how ineffective it's been. The other positive takeaway from November has to do with his approach to particular opponents. In general, there are guys Hoshoryu likes to try and throw, and others he likes to attack head-on. Over time, this plays out in how often he attempts throws against certain guys. He didn't attempt a single throw in 3 matches against Takayumi, for example, because going straight at him worked. 1 throw in 6 matches against Abi, and that one only happened because Hoshoryu grabbed Abi's pushing arm and yanked him down. On the flip side, he tried throwing Kotozakura in all 5 of their 2024 matches, Onosato in all 5 of theirs, and Takanosho 3 out of 3 times as well. But what he did the first 2 days of November is noteworthy. Day 1 was against Oho. They'd fought 3 times in 2024 up to that point. Oho had won twice. In the first match, Hoshoryu hit a little baby throw on the retreat that knocked Oho off balance and allowed for a slapdown. The second time, he really wanted to get the belt, but Oho kept blasting him and never let him find a way inside. The third, he immediately went for a throw, but it looked like Oho had watched some tape and just kinda shoved him down. In short, Hoshoryu kept trying throws against Oho, and Oho had overall gotten the better of the matchup. So Nephew flipped the script by straight up bum rushing him. Oho got the initial push, but Nephew turned it around and went straight for the force out. Never had a thought of throwing, and it worked a treat. Day 2 was against Wakamoto Haru. Despite a brief back and forth in their head-to-head in 2023, he's gone back to absolutely ruining Waka ever since. Before November, he'd won every match between them in 2024 on the power of some throw or another. They weren't always pretty, but they always worked. He didn't need to change it up. But, as if to prove a point, he came out hot, spun Waka around, and flung him out of the ring like a big bag of trash. The other matches where he didn't attempt to throw were almost all against opponents he rarely attempts to throw anyway. The only arguable exception was Day 3 against Terunofuji, who he beat so regularly he might as well pull a Kimarite out of a hat as a challenge. So, after the first few days, Hoshoryu pretty much fought like normal. but the willingness to switch things up so dramatically against even a couple of opponents is relatively unusual, and the fact it worked so well should be viewed as a good sign. Still, where Koto might be able to take the rope with 12 wins in a June Yusho, Hoshoryu almost certainly needs 13, and there is a rough road ahead of him. The major threats to his rope run include Teru, Onosato, and Kotozakura. In other words, he could start 12-0 and still get his hopes stomped out. And you have to include Terunofuji in that group as well. This sport is about matchups, and right now Atami is genuinely Nephew's toughest opponent outside of Teru. Then there are the medium-level threats like Kirishima, Oho, Wakataka Kage, and Abi. And finally the lower-end threats, the potential spoilers, Tobizaru, Ura, and Gonoyama. Every one of these guys is on Hoshoryu's probable schedule for January, and he can only lose to 2 of them if he wants to earn the road. Yokozuna odds, 10%. I keep looking at his November schedule and wondering how I can put his chances so low when he had to beat nearly all of these guys to be in this position in the first place. And I don't want to act like a win doesn't count because of good fortune, but there's getting a little lucky, and then there's the ways he beat Terunofuji and Onosato. I'm not saying it wasn't really a 13-2 basho. What I am saying is that now he has to beat those guys again or else beat everyone else around him. Plus, Hiradoumi, Hoshoma, Churanoumi, and Kotoshoho have been replaced on the schedule by Takanosho, Gonoyama, Tobizaru, and Terunofuji. That's 4 free wins replaced by 1 free win, 2 likely wins, and friggin' Terunofuji. Set up your shrines and say your prayers, Nephew fans, because this one is gonna take a miracle. And that's our look at the current Yokozuna hopefuls, Kotozakura and Hoshoryu. It's a rare event for 2 guys to be in contention for the title simultaneously, and I really wish it looked like they both had a legit shot at ascending to the top at the same time. It'd be a great story. But what do you think? Am I seriously underselling Hoshoryu's chances, or Koto's for that matter? Let me know in the comments. Other than that, enjoy the basho, check out our community posts along the way, and make sure to come back for our instant Banzuke the day the tournament ends. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.